Welcome to On the Table with Ashley. This is our food and connection series that explores the many ways people create connection through food, from community gardens and classrooms to dinner tables across the world. The series highlights stories of gathering nourishment, memory, and care. Through insightful conversations with experts from all walks of life, the vulnerable conversations shared over dinner, the scents and recipes that carry memories of home, and the grassroots efforts communities make to combat food insecurity and support one another. Through these conversations, we examine how food unites people, preserves culture, conjures memory, and creates identities. Ultimately, the series reveals the profound role food plays in nearly every human experience. Our guest today is Anton Van Schaik. Anton is a Pitzer College graduate in food and agriculture studies. For the last 3 years, he worked at the Catholic Charities of Los Angeles for the CalFresh Healthy Living Program as an urban gardener and nutrition educator, creating food gardens for students all across Los Angeles. In his free time, Anton loves to cook, garden, bike, and read books under trees. A quick note, we had some audio issues in this episode, but it's truly a lovely episode. It's definitely worth the listen. Enjoy.
Anton Van Schaik, thank you so much for joining me. I'm really excited to talk with you about everything you're doing with CalFresh, working with kids, growing food, and the importance this has, frankly, in our lives. So thank you so much for joining me.
Likewise, I'm thrilled to be here. This is actually my first ever podcast that I'm remotely a part of, and so this is a very exciting experience for me as well.
Fantastic. So I always like to start just hearing a little bit about where you grew up and what kind of kid you were.
So, born and raised in New York City. I grew up in Harlem, so Upper Manhattan area. My mom is Jewish, my dad is from the Netherlands. So, it made me a very outspoken kid, someone who also loves to ride bikes, and it also made me a bit of a penny pincher. I think the biggest fight my parents ever got about was the price of tomatoes. That kind of gives you a little bit of a glimpse into our house. And yeah, I just love growing up in New York City. It has the reputation it has for a reason. Everything happens there, everything all at once. The school that I went to was 40 blocks away from my house, and my dad would put me on the back of his bike on the way to work. And my dad's commute was something like 20 miles there, 20 miles back. And so I would kind of sit along for 4-ish miles on the back, rain, wind, any type of weather, hail. I now live in LA, so even though the weather's a lot nicer, the streets are a little bit more funky. So I don't bike as much as I'd like to right now. But yeah, I think I'd love to bike.
And it's a big part of your childhood. So
Yes.
I've been to the Netherlands, and I know a lot of people use a bicycle as their main
Yes.
form of transportation, which is
Yes.
so healthy. And I love the cultural heritage that you have, and I'm excited to hear more about whether or not that's affected sort of the path that you're taking with the work that you're doing. And that you said that the biggest fight you remember was about the price of tomatoes, and you are working with food and growing food. So there has to be some connectivity there. So why don't you start by telling us, what is CalFresh?
CalFresh is essentially, because everything happens a little bit distinct in California, is California's version of SNAP, so the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. So that is essentially the umbrella. There's 5 parts of CalFresh, ranging all the way from the benefits aspect to the offices that deal with client-to-client interaction. My specific program that I work with is CalFresh Healthy Living. So it was a program started in the 90s, got introduced with the Farm Bill, and essentially it's a multi-layered program, and it's more commonly known domestically as SNAP Ed. So here it's CalFresh Healthy Living. In most other states, I think every other state except for California, it's SNAP Ed. And essentially, it's multifaceted. The overall goal, however, is to, whether it be through nutrition programs, through gardening, or through physical activity, make a more meaningful, nutritious, positive, healthy impact on people's lives. So we were all the way from 2 years old to, I think one of our oldest clients was in their 90s. So any age group, anybody's applicable to receive, although we typically work with low resource, low income communities.
Okay, so tell us how you got involved with CalFresh Healthy Living. What drew you to the work? And of those 3 areas, are you focused on all of them or just 1 or 2 of them?
That's a fantastic question. So, as a part of the program, I work as like an urban gardener and nutrition educator. So, essentially, my role within the program is to assemble gardens, construct edible gardens at schools, community centers, pretty much any space that it qualifies to receive our program. We'll go and we'll implement it. I also supplement with some nutrition education and also some physical activity classes. The way that I kind of got into this line of work, ironically, through my parents. My parents, like, I had a VCR growing up, so I think I'm one of the only people in my gen who like knows how to rewind the tape. And so my mom was like, no TV except for like educational content. And so the only thing that I was allowed to watch was the Food Network growing up. And so like while other kids were like, oh, Hannah Montana was my like huge part of my childhood, or iCarly, mine was Barefoot Contessa. And so me and Ida Garten,
Love Ina. She's
I
like
love it.
my favorite.
I know, I was like, as a kid, I was like, if I could get adopted, like, please, even just for the weekends, I'd love to live Jeffrey's life. I think that's like my
Right?
that's
Yes.
like my ideal life. So growing up, I just like that, and also like my parents tried their best, but I don't think their cooking was. They're very passionate cooks, but passion doesn't always translate into like palatability, unfortunately. I think the two together just kind of led me to like fall into cooking, love cooking, and then from there I kind of was like, well, if I love this aspect, but I also want to be able to know and learn and grow my own food. And especially being from New York, I think it's a really fascinating, it creates a very fascinating connection because you never see the food that, like, you never see the origin of the food that you eat. 99% of all food coming into New York is grown outside of New York. And so I think growing up inherently, there's a huge disconnect between where the food was grown and the food that I was eating. And I think that kind of left just a lasting imprint into my brain. And I think that was something that as I got older, I just fell in love with. And I love that it's an area that I never stop learning. I can never stop growing. You could always pick up a new trick, always a new tip. And it's just something that I feel like once you get the bug, no pun intended, you kind of just like keep cascading into it. You just fall more and more in love with it.
So when did you start to cook?
I would say about 9 or 10 years old. My dad kind of just typical Dutch. He like left me in the kitchen. He says, "Here are the sharp knives. Here are the band-aids. Go to town. Like figure it out." And so my parents were very generous. They sat through a lot of not so great meals before it slowly got a little better and better. And now I try my best to cook at least 3 or 4 times a week still for the meal prep for over the course of the week.
Okay, so tell us about a day at work. So you
Yes,
said you work at schools, community centers. Let's start with a school. So I grew up in the Bay Area, and you've probably heard of
fantastic.
Alice Waters and her
Edible
edible
school garden.
schoolyard. Yeah, it's so cool. It's so amazing. And she's an activist. And funny story, I'm a lawyer, and I remember I was a young lawyer and working at a law firm, and they took us to Chez Panisse for dinner. And at that time, and I don't know, I haven't been in a long time, you could go in the back and kind of watch them. And so I was watching them, and then and I've always loved dessert. So I was watching the pastry chefs. And so they asked me what I was doing, and I said, well, I'm in law school. And I said, I've always also wanted to be a pastry chef. I also love to watch all of the cooking shows. And they're like, you should definitely become a pastry chef, which I did not do, but I try my best. I love to cook and I love to bake.
May I quickly ask, what is your favorite thing to make? What's your favorite thing to bake?
To bake,
Yes.
okay, so I have one thing that I make every year, which is I make a homemade apple pie for Thanksgiving. Make the crust, make the filling, the whole thing,
Yeah.
and everybody loves it. And I think, one of the reasons that I love to talk about food and gathering is because I think a lot of people have a fear that they don't need of cooking.
Mhm.
And for pies in particular, people are afraid of crusts. It's really actually not that hard. And they can be very forgiving. And with like apple pie filling in particular, I think most people their failure is not cooking it long enough, and
Uh,
then the top will be looking like it's getting burnt. So
yeah.
my apple pie is probably like my crowning achievement, but I'm one of those people who loves to try different things all the time. So I went to a dinner party the other weekend and I'd never made pavlova, and I'm like, I'm going to make
Mm,
pavlova. And it was amazing. It was so much fun to make, and everybody enjoyed it. So I will try new recipes when I'm having people over. If, I talked to another guest in this series who's an amazing food historian and also loves to cook. And he's like, the worst that happens is you eat tomorrow. Like, people shouldn't be so afraid. It's experimenting and trying, and is one of the great joys of cooking and
yeah.
sharing food.
Yeah. That's so real. And I feel like also people get like stage fright. They like
Yes.
make this meal and they're like, oh my, I need the people. People get performance anxiety. They're like, it needs to be perfect. Like, I need everybody to, and the anxiety around creating the perfect dish. I feel like I am so impressed that you're willing to try new things when you like have people over. I feel like that always gives me such anxiety because I'm like, I need to know that I know how to make it.
And however it works for people is great, but I like to talk about this a lot because the truth is when you invite people into your home, the food is not the most important thing. The most important thing
Mm,
is the human connection
mm-hmm,
and being present. Earlier in my life, I would create these elaborate menus. I was in the kitchen, and now I really try not to do that because the most important
mm,
thing is to be present and
yeah,
connect with your guests.
yeah,
And the food is secondary. I mean, it has to be edible, but it doesn't have to be the most memorable part of the
mm,
evening. And so I just don't want people to be so afraid. Having said that, like, amazing food is of course amazing.
yeah.
So, you know,
To go back to I think the question earlier is like that has been the most rewarding part of working with kids because so many of the kids that we work with, it's their first time trying a food that you kind of take for granted. Many kids only know marinara sauce, ketchup. They only know the like processed version. And so sharing that moment with a kid for the first time, watching them try their first tomato or try their first carrot or try their first like strawberry that they grew is it really does kind of boil down the essence of this is really the joy of what food can bring to people. I think it's so important that from a young age we view kids and we imbue food with this meaning and we allow kids to be able to take control of that process and be able to feel confident enough to, should they be in the right climate, put their apple seed outside, grow it, and then take your tips on how to make the perfect apple pie.
why don't you give us an example in a school of creating a garden, gardening, and then all the way through to tasting that first tomato?
Yeah. So essentially what we do, we meet with the school, we say, hey, we want to do a garden space. And this kind of goes for if you want to set up a garden anywhere. The most important thing is location. You need to know how much sun are you going to get, where does the sun set, where does the sun rise, what's the type of things that you want to grow. Are you going to do a garden bed? Are you going to do in ground? Do you want trees? And the second thing is what can your climate support? I think we are incredibly spoiled as Californians because we pretty much have everything all the time. Obviously seasonality, but we really get blessed with how much we can kind of push the concept of seasonality here. So that is our first thing. Our second thing is we always, 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 always walk the kids through the process. So we say, if we're going to do a garden bed, this is how you assemble it. This is what you look for. This is why we chose this bed. This is why we didn't choose this. Then we get into the soil, the fundamentals. How do you care for soil? What is soil? What's the difference between soil and dirt? Why do we add certain things to soil? Why shouldn't we add certain things to soil? So we kind of, we begin to kind of do little by little, and then depending on where we are in the season, typically we have kids like plant their own seeds. Kids love throwing seeds, and they love trying it, ironically. And they'll always see, they always go like, wow, oh my God, my bean grew. And we'll like put the bean in, grow it, and then about, I don't know, months to 4 months later, depending on the crop, we also do a lot of recipe demonstrations. So a big part of the focus of our program is giving kids basics, even from like toddlers, of we'll give them like soft, like I don't want to say rubber, but soft plastic knives. So like knives with no serrated teeth, and we'll have them just chop things like tomatoes, and just have them feel, even though we do most of the work. We'll have, we'll have them like feel like, okay, this is the salsa I made. Or we'll give them like a mortar and pestle, and we'll make like guacamole or something. And they're like, oh, I got to smash the avocado. And I think recipe demonstrations are a huge part. So we always try and, regardless of like, obviously, we'll, for example, like a carrot, pull it out, wash it, give it to the kids. But I think a big part is also learning knife skills, learning how to prepare it. What can you pair this carrot with in the garden? Have you ever had carrot and mint? Have you ever had carrot and a tomato together? What if you were to, we have a lot of lemon trees, obviously. What if you put lemon on a carrot? Like we try and kind of ratatouille them and like try and have these like connections between the foods that they try as well. And like really enforce that, enforce their own ability to want to try that as well.
Yeah. Do you find that they are open to trying, like a kid who's only had tomato sauce, generally open to trying that raw tomato, or is it all over the map?
I would say in 8 out of 10 cases, irregardless, again, of whether a kid has tried it, it's going to be, ew, I don't like tomatoes. And you're like, I don't know, Donald, have you ever had a tomato? And he's like, well, no, but that's not really the point. And we're like, well, try this one. And then our big thing is you don't need to like it, just try it. Like, no one's ever forcing you to eat it, but like, even if it's a garden bean, even if it's tomato, just see whether you like it. And I think what also has been really interesting has been witnessing, and I think honestly for a lot of these kids, I would wager to say that this generation of kids coming up, most of their experiences with fruits and vegetables come in an altered state, at least in some capacity, prior to the original crop. So for example, like marinara sauce or tomatoes or ketchup, tomatoes are not inherently like the first thing they'll try. They'll try the like kind of more processed version first. And we see that crop up in really interesting ways. Like for example, we have like an overgrowing patch of mint, as most people probably do in their gardens if they don't put it in a pot. And we give it to kids and they'll try it and they'll be like, oh my God, this tastes like five gum. And we're like, yes, it does. But like this is the original flavor. And so it's also fascinating to see kids' associations with like processed foods be the kind of primary basis by which we engage. And it's almost like a walk back process for a lot of these kids.
Yeah, it's so interesting. So, I mean, there has to be a moment you can remember where a kid bit into a tomato and their eyes just were like, oh my gosh, this is a tomato.
Yes,
Has that happened? Like in a
100%.
good way, like in a good
Yeah.
way.
I mean, the countless. I mean, the amount of kids who like have their first, especially a cherry tomato, because you can kind of do it in
Yeah.
one bite, and they'll do like a small nibble, and then if they really like it, they'll like, it's like the big eyes, like wide smile, and there's just something so satisfying. And I'm trying to be like, I told you, but also kind of like, just give it a try.
Well, the other thing, and then this is something that they may have to, I don't know how you deal with this like on a go forward basis, but there's a very, very big difference between a cherry tomato that you're growing and like a tomato that you can get it, like many tomatoes that you can get in the grocery store that are really not good.
Yes.
They could be mealy, they could be tasteless. You know, there's
Yeah.
such a big difference between a beautiful, wonderful tomato and a
Yes.
not so great tomato. So, do you talk about that with them?
A little bit. I mean, this is more so obviously for the older kids. We try and break down the concept of GMOs as best as we can. The tomato that's given to you at a store is created in a very specific way. And we try and do this in the garden and we try and walk them through. But we'll be like the tomato in the store is essentially it's a product. And it looks and it smells and it tastes. It resembles a tomato, but the tomatoes that we're eating here, because oftentimes the seeds that we're using tend to be more heirloom based, or we use more organic methods by which to grow it. And we also really try and introduce varieties of tomatoes that you don't find most places. Like last year, we had 2 types of tomatoes called chocolate sprinkles and dancing with Smurfs. It's like once you get down like the rabbit hole, people really will name any like strain of tomato. They'll name of anything. It's really fun, the different cultivars that you can get. And so we had Dancing with Smurfs, we had our Sun Golds, we had our chocolate sprinkles, and we had the kids be able to kind of try like tomatoes can be purple. Tomatoes can be so dark purple that they in fact look like little chocolate sprinkles. Or the Dancing with Smurfs kind of made a slightly, not totally, but like a little bit of a bluish, purplish tomato. And we also had ones that like tasted a little bit like a cross between a pineapple and tomato. And like our goal is just to kind of introduce kids to the bounty and be like, the chances are you're going to get a couple of varieties and they're going to be delicious at the grocery store, but there's thousands, if not, I would wager tens of thousands of varieties of tomatoes out there. And like once you can have fun with what you're able to grow and eat.
Yeah. So you talked about growing up in New York where almost none of the food was from New York and came either packaged or processed. I've been talking a lot in this series about how we are increasingly disconnected from our food. So I was talking to somebody, they're like, when you go to the store and you buy a steak, it doesn't say cow, it says beef, right? Like,
Yeah.
even at that level, we're disconnected from where it's coming from. I think, almost nobody has seen an animal butchered or like is that close to sort of what we're putting in our bodies. So I have to assume that part of what you love about this job for many of these kids and even adults, it may be an introduction
Yeah.
of like, okay, when you go to the store and you see this processed thing, this is, well, like gum, maybe as an example, like spearmint or mint or whatever is where it's coming from. And it's an herb and you can grow it. And you can also flavor your foods with it, right? You could
Yeah.
put it in a salad with feta and tomato and you can,
Yeah.
and so what do you hope that you are doing by this either introduction or reintroduction that will be lasting for the people that you're working with?
I love that question. I think, especially growing up in New York City, which arguably is like the pinnacle of what we consider to be like urbanization, like a cosmopolitan urbanization, industrialized. You're living in a concrete jungle, essentially. And I think a concrete jungle is interesting because it's like we've replaced nature with such an unnatural form that it's like we no longer exist within jungle. It is just concrete. And so I think New York has a plethora of green spaces, but they're very small. And so I think the biggest thing that I love and I get out of it is being able to connect people, especially in an urban setting like Los Angeles, to their own food distribution or in their own food production and their own consumption habits. I think it's interesting that like 40% of all food waste happens at home. And a large part of the methane gas getting produced comes from food rotting in landfills. And I think when people, and again, no fault of their own, but understand just how hard people have to work to get the food onto their plate, how many hours in the beating sun, how many pests you have to clean off, how many times you have to water, how many times you have to check the seedlings, how many times you have to fail, how many times you have to trim, how many times you have to prune, how many times you have to constantly, sometimes on a day-to-day basis, monitor, care for, deal with all of these micro things that allow you to get the crop that you want to eat. And I think that has been my favorite thing about gardening is that it teaches you a lot about the importance of the small, the importance of the everyday. Like, for example, one stalk of asparagus takes 3 years to grow. It takes
Wow.
3 years before you can even have one asparagus. You have to go, you plant your little asparagus bud, it'll grow, you cut it off, it'll grow again, you cut it off, it'll grow, you cut it off. That third one, that's the first one you can eat. And that's just one. So it's like you buy a bundle and it's like you're eating the lineage. If you multiply, I don't know, if you get 6, you're eating 18 years worth of history in one bundle. And I
That's
think
amazing.
conceptualizing food in that way makes you look at asparagus in a completely different way. Or even vanilla. I mean, vanilla came from one plant on one island. It came from Madagascar. It came from one plant. So all the vanilla pods that we've ever eaten ever have been from one plant. And it only flowers, I think, for 1 or 2 days out of the year. All the vanilla everywhere in the world. And so it's never, ever since then, I've been like, I'm not wasting any vanilla extract. Ever. And I'm going to get the real thing because it's so special. I think the more food that we can grow ourselves, the more food that we don't waste, the better our planet will be, the less methane gas there's going to be. I think the more that we're going to inherently begin to take little steps to care for the earth, and the more that we care for the earth, the more it's going to care for us. And I just think it's a very cyclical way, and it's, I think, knowing that you live within something larger than yourself, it helps you ground
Yeah.
in a much more, not to circle back, but concrete way, in it, ironically enough.
Well, so Ken Aliba, who is the food historian and professor and writer that I recently spoke with, talked about this too, about if you are growing your own food and or cooking a lot and preparing your own food, then you have less desire to waste it because you know what went into it. And it's also feels like a greater gift when you give it and share it with other people.
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
also beautiful. It also is going to be healthier, right? Because your tomato sauce doesn't have to have sugar in it, like all these things that hopefully you're also talking to the kids about when you're talking about the processing process. But we are getting, and one of the things that he said is, but we're getting further and further away from that. So it's so cool that you're working on this. And I think it is a little bit of an uphill battle. I mean, I do believe the pendulum swings and hopefully it will swing back. Ken's perspective is that, when he asks people like, why don't you cook? Almost everybody says, I don't have time.
Mm-hmm.
And especially in the United States, but I think this is largely true globally, it's because we're working so much. And Ken's perspective is like, it should be fun. It should be like abundance and bountiful and fun and experimentation. And we have to get back to that perspective. And he actually writes cookbooks, but he says, I don't like to follow them other than a very few of them. Like, people should just get in the kitchen and just put things together. Like, if the recipe says you need 2 onions and you have 1, it's going to be fine, and just sort of letting go of all of this and just putting things together that you think will work. And sometimes they will, and sometimes they won't, but the process will be wonderful. And often the outcome will be wonderful. And then you'll want to waste it less because you put so much effort into making it.
I think developing that intuition with food is something that we really try hard to do with the kids. And we do with everybody. I mean, we also offer a lot of adult classes. We're working with teens at one site as well. I mean, I think that's the mission, is like, one thing that we do a lot with the teens is we'll try and take something conceptual, so like a strawberry shortcake, something like that. And we're like, how can we make this healthier? What if we made the whipped cream ourselves? What if we went to the store, got our own strawberries? And then what if we made, like, my coworker made these really good, very low sugar protein biscuits. And like, you can still have sugar 100%. You don't need to cut out fat. It just is about being more cognizant and mindful and meaningful about the ways in which you're ingesting, I think, as well. And so I think everything that you said, I mean, like, if I had more hands, I'd snap. Like, I'd be like a chorus. Like, I think that's exactly right. I think that's my favorite thing, is giving people the ability to have that own intuition, that ownership of the food they make. And I think so much of the food that people consume now, especially young people, is not cooked in home. It's not ancestral recipes. It's not passed down. It's manufactured, it's processed, and it's given to them for the purpose of them being a consumer. And I think it's rewiring in their brains, like, what am I consuming? Am I consuming a product, or am I consuming something with a deeper meaning behind it? That's something more soulful.
Well, one of the other things Ken talked about, and I'm going to start, I keep telling myself I'm going to start doing this. He asks people a lot, like, do you make your own stock? It used to be very, very common.
Yeah.
You would just save like your vegetables and your bones from like whatever meat you were cooking, and you put them in the freezer or whatever. And once a month you make a stock and then you freeze it and you use it. People who have not had homemade stock are missing out at the deepest level, because I think like homemade stock is deeply pleasurable, and there's no reason that we can't all be saving, like, the edges of our celery and carrots. Put it in the freezer with your bones once a month, make your stock, and then freeze it, and then you have it to add to your rice or to like stew, whatever it is you're making. I feel like that is something I would love to see come back. And if you could just start with one thing like that, like just start with stock, and then maybe it's like a seed and it blossoms and you start to do other things. But that could even be something you guys do, because I'm sure you have a lot of vegetables that
Totally.
are not totally used. And even if there's a way to like show them how to make stock and then they can make it at home, and what an easy, beautiful thing to do. And the sad part about that is that he talked about is there are, food companies who make these cubes that are super easy to use, and they are displacing these age-old rituals
Hmm.
of making the stock.
Yeah.
And it's not the same. Like it cannot be replaced
Yeah. Totally.
flavor wise and nutrient wise.
Yeah. I'm sure if you have a relative who was Jewish, but my mom, every time I would get sick, she'd go out to the store, she'd get her chicken bones, she'd put them in the pot. She did our great grandmother's recipe. She put chicken feet because they were the fattiest, the more glutinous part, and so she would just imbue it with all the water, all the seasonings. She'd do her onions, her carrots, her celery, and she would just boil. And so it's funny every time I smell it's Jewish penicillin for a reason, but every time I smell chicken stock, I'm like, am I sick? But yeah, I mean, it's something that like when you have the ability, when you have the know-how, and there's nothing better than a good stock.
Yeah.
It hits right here in something
Yeah.
that you're like, oh, I know, like my great grandmother Ida, God bless her. I was like, I know Ida ate the same stew in the shtetl. I'm like, here I am, like having the same.
And there's something so beautiful about that too, because the food connects you to the generations before you.
Exactly.
And you know, I talk about that a lot too. Like you asked me about what I'm known for or what I love to cook, and it is a ritual. Like I think most of the things in your soup when you're sick, most of these things that we have these very strong memories tied to are ritualized.
Yeah.
So it's a holiday or it's a tradition, and there's so much power in that aside from the food in tying you to your history. We don't want to forget it. We don't want to lose that.
Yeah. I remember the first time that my mom ever sat down with me and made the soup. And it was something I treasure. I'll never forget that memory. And especially like my mom's brisket. Shout out to all the other moms out there, but like my mom's brisket is better than anybody else's brisket. And when she sat down and taught me how to do it, it's something that every time I eat it now, it's like I get a hug. And I think this is just one of the most, because everybody has to eat all the time for the most part. Like people, you have to do it. And so you develop naturally these relationships with food. And I just think it is, my opinion, the greatest way to connect with people is through food,
Yeah.
and especially
Yeah.
family.
And friends, I would say too. So let's
Yes.
talk a little bit about
Yeah.
community gardens. So
Yeah.
you set these up in schools, you set them up in community centers. So have you observed people working in the community gardens? And can you talk about not just the food that they're growing, but the process of growing it together? So planting, weeding, harvesting, and then hopefully eating together. And I don't know, maybe everybody takes their portion home and cooks separately. But I think that a lot of the wonder of it happens in the process of it. And this
Yeah.
is, true for life. And, you talked about these little moments, like the everyday moments. And I've been focusing on reading and understanding that better. And I actually firmly believe that the secret to happiness is not some lofty goal, but it is in the appreciation of the everyday
Yeah.
simple things, doing them with intention and enjoyment. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your observations in the community garden setting.
Yeah. I mean, I easily one of the most rewarding aspects because I think we typically get two types of people. One is people who grew up with a garden but no longer have a garden, and so they very much like love being back in a garden-like space because it reminds them of home, or that will remind them of their family, or they'll remind them of where they grew up. I think being able to provide a space, especially in a large city, is such a gift, and it's so fun. Every time I pull up to a community garden, it'll be like building, 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 and then it'll just be like a little oasis, like tucked away in front of a parking lot or off to the side of a street or like kind of tucked away behind a building. And it's such a gift to enter those sorts of spaces, especially in such a big city. And I think the other crowd of people are people who've never had that much experience. People who are like still scared, even up into their 20s, 30s, 40s, about whether or not a worm is going to bite them. And so being able to walk with them how to, I don't know, create like a little alley of soil to put your seeds in, how deep to put seeds in, walking them through a couple weeks, months later about how to continue to care, how to do organic pest control, little things like that, I think it's have been so rewarding, and then it's always rewarding. One of my favorite memories was I worked with a nutrition educator who was also working on our team, and so we would do like half and half lessons, half inside, half outside. So she would do nutrition education about a certain topic, and then we would do gardening education, and we would try and weave the two together. And so a method that we wanted to do was the Three Sisters planting method. So it's corns, beans, and some sort of squash. And essentially what you do is put the corn in first, put the beans around the corn, and the squash kind of around the outside. And essentially they all work symbiotically together, both in the garden and then as well culinarily. They taste delicious. Succotash, great example. But one of the most rewarding things is that we were able to harvest some corn. We gave it to one of the ladies, and she made elote out of it. It was so cool. I mean, we like grew this like blue corn, and then she was able to make a recipe from it, and it was just delicious. And we ended up having like on the last day, I think it was like a 6-week course. The last day, everybody brought in recipes from their like own cultural backgrounds, and we made dishes together. We got to eat and talk.
That is so cool. With the kids, have you, and I don't know if you get to go back and visit them, like if you work with a classroom, do you get to go back a year or two later and see how they're doing? But I'm fascinated if you have any feedback loop, whether it's direct or indirect, that what they're learning with you, they are taking home, and there are any changes that are happening at home.
So most of the sites, if not all the sites that we work with on a week-to-week basis. But our program, unfortunately, is ending nationally. And so today I actually had my last day with
Oh
a
my
school
gosh.
that I worked at for the past 3 years. So it was very melancholy, but it was very heartwarming because last week I was working with a student, and third she's in third grade, and I've been teaching her for, I guess this is my third year teaching her. And I gave her some pumpkin seeds, and she went to a different garden, like a part of the garden, and put her seeds in, and this week they sprouted. She's in third grade, and she already knows. She knows how deep to put them, where to put them, how far apart to space them. And it was just amazing. I mean, coming back today on the last day, it was like, these are just going to keep growing this summer. And so I think we see both in the garden and also kids be more excited to try different types of fruits and try fruits in different types of ways. We make a lot of smoothies with the kids because that's a great way to kind of sneak in like vegetables. So we'll be like big bad scary kale. We'll like work into like a berry smoothie or something, and they'll be like, you can't even taste it. And we're like, that's the point, but you're still eating it. And so I think something that we really try and reinforce is how can you have these fruits and vegetables in a way that is also like pleasing to you and in a way that's going to actually transmit it to their everyday lives, things that they're actually going to ask for and things that they really enjoy eating.
Yeah. Well, why don't you tell us about the funding, the politics, all of that. Yeah, let's talk about it.
It's been a crazy year. So last year when President Trump signed his big beautiful bill as part of the cuts to SNAP, he cut SNAP Ed in its entirety. So he completely defunded it's $5 billion program nationwide, completely gutted it. And so nationally, by the end of this year, SNAP Ed will basically no longer exist. And so a large part of what we've been doing this past year is winding down our program, shutting down our services, ending our workshops, and trying to pass over, whether it be a gardening class or a walking club or nutrition classes. We've been trying to kind of find either community champions or find people in the community to take on the work.
So, is there any hope of California funding it?
It's an agency by agency basis, I think. I get contracted through the Catholic Charities of Los Angeles. So essentially, CalFresh gives Catholic Charities X amount of money. They say implement our program. And so I think it's agency dependent. So whether or not the agency wants to get private funding or wants to provide some of its own funding to continue the services. Unfortunately, our program is ending in mid-July, which is a bit surreal because we've been around for 7 years here in Los Angeles. We've been working with schools from, at this point, second grade to now these kids are about to begin high school. Some have already graduated, some I think are about to reach college even. And so we've really been embedded with these communities. And so it feels rather bizarre to show up to work every day knowing that the work that you're doing is actively being deprioritized by the people who funded it in the first place. And I also, this is my own thing, but I think it's rather ironic that in the rise and the promulgation of MAHA, Make America Healthy Again, that they would choose to cut something as, in my opinion, beneficial and auxiliary as SNAP Ed. I think it's interesting to see food exists on a political spectrum as well.
Yeah.
And
Well, I think food is political. I mean, people who say it's not,
exactly,
I'm not, it is.
exactly.
That was the other thing that Ken said that I thought was fascinating. Like, food is language. So when you serve something, you are saying something, and whether you intend to or not. And sometimes it is intended and sometimes it's not intended, but it is language. And so tell us what you think from your experience will be lost when this program ends, and also if there's any data on, a more national level in terms of, I'm sure there have to be some statistics with the program on like what is accomplished in terms of nutritional literacy, healthy eating, all of these different aspects.
Yeah. I mean, I think on practical basis, especially in gardening and nutrition classes, I mean, people are learning out on basic classes about nutrition labels, about calories, learning the difference between processed versus unprocessed foods, whole grains versus processed grains, little things like that. In terms of gardening, I mean, I think a large part of what we do as part of the gardening team is just do basic garden upkeep. And I think a lot of these sites are so busy. A lot of these community centers already have enough going on. We work with a lot of food pantries as well. So a big part of the reason why we wanted to set up these gardens is to grow auxiliary produce for these food pantries to be able to dispense to people. And I think that service, both as the garden as a site of education, a site of learning, as well as a site of consumption, is getting lost. And I think especially for young people, we serve a lot of kids. These programs are hard to come by, and especially programs that are free. I mean, we don't charge anything to the school. All of it comes from us. And so I think that also makes it that much more appealing for schools to want to participate in. And I think rightly so. I mean, budgets are tight right now. I think regardless of whether or not you're in a family or an institution, like budgets are tight. And so having that free program go away, I think is tough for a lot of people. And I also think generally, I mean, I just think it sends such the wrong political message, I mean, about our values and our values as a country to the world. And I think not having that be a priority for us is a little shameful, honestly, and rather disheartening as someone who wants to devote their life to something like this and
Yeah.
not having the ability to do that.
What does it sort of inflame in you to want to do? Like, do you want to start another program and get funding for it? Like, what is it that you want to do to sort of put your stamp on
Yeah.
it?
I think the past month and a half, I've really been trying hard to work with every garden that I can to train people who are interested in learning, offer classes, and just inspire people to go to the garden. On a personal level, I also am beginning grad school. And so I think going back to school, and I'm going to school for environmental policy essentially, is kind of the broad spectrum of what I want to get out of it. And I think hoping to institute something on a more kind of national, larger scale level. I want to see what it would be like to impact something on a broader scale.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's very cool. What do you think children gain from gardening that has nothing to do with food?
I think working with kids, you kind of see just like every impulse of what it means to be a human being kind of actualized all the time because there is no like self-monitoring yet, or there's very little self-monitoring. And so you see kind of like all aspects of like things of like, I don't know. You see both the beauties and the horrors of being a human. So you'll see kids like pick up a worm and they're like, I can't wait to kill it. And you're like, no, no, you don't need to do that. Like it's good. It's okay. We want that. And so I think you teach kids about the importance of life, essentially, on a very basic level. I think we teach kids to be less afraid. A lot of kids will see a spider, even like this big, and petrified, like sprint the other way. And I'm like, you might be 8 years old, but like there is nothing to fear. And I think also like sharing and being like, you kind of have to understand like the basics of math. If there's one strawberry and there's 5 kids who want it, how are we all gonna share this strawberry equally? And so I think there's a lot of practical everyday lessons that these kids can pick up.
Okay. If every community could create one food-centered gathering place, what would you hope it would look like?
I think it'd be like one really long table, almost like a vineyard. Like think of like a Napa style structure. So to have like a little inn or a little place that people can like gather and talk, it'd be like a little like artist residency. People can make art, and then surrounding it would be like a huge garden and just fruit trees for days, pollinators, just kind of a plethora of green. It's like just a very verdant space, and then just a really long table, kind of broken up a little bit in spurts, but just a spot for people to be able to just kind of put stuff on, grow, eat. Honestly, I feel like it's like I really want to move to the Bay one day. I love the Bay. I think the Bay Area is like Narnia, and I think a lot of the models that exist when you kind of leave the city a little bit, or in like some areas of community garden spaces, where there's an emphasis on bringing the food together with other people.
Yeah.
We have so much access and ability for green space. We should prioritize having like citrus on more just public avenues, more streets. Walking down the street, I know it's gonna be a little tough, but it's like if you just treat people and train people to know when fruit is ready, they'll pick it. You're hungry
Yeah.
on your way to work, grab a I don't know, grab a persimmon on your way to work. Grab a loquat and like teach people to not waste these things. Or if you see it on the ground, you like put it in a small area so a squirrel will get it. I don't know. Like, learn to live more communally and just work in produce and fruit trees into everyday urban spaces.
Well, I love this dream.
Yeah, I know.
And after you get your degree in environmental policy, you can make it happen. So
That's the dream.
at the end of every episode, I like to ask 5 questions. Before we get there, is there anything you want to share about CalFresh, the work that you have been doing with kids and adults? One thing that we haven't really talked about that maybe you can talk a little bit more about is why it's so important to focus this work on areas where people have less
Yeah.
means. But if there's anything else you wanted to share or leave people with before we go to these questions.
Yeah, I mean, I think something that is really powerful and incredible about a lot of the classes that we offer, especially in low resource, low income areas, is I think there's not a lot of free classes, is what we've noticed in these spaces. And these classes become more than just a site of education about something specific like gardening. We'll have people come who, from all different backgrounds, who will come, and I'm thinking of one lady in particular, and she would just come to lessons over and over again because she just liked the people that she knew. And I think she also had she was dealing with her own mental health struggles, and so it was an excuse for her to be able to leave the house and to be able to be outside in a community, in a class, and not have to pay money for it. And she was able to gain a practical skill as well as be with people. And the amount of times that also I'll get people coming up to me and they'll be like, "Can I have one of those sunflowers?" Or can I just try that? And it just leads to more spontaneity, I think. And it just leads to a kind of greater, I think, vibrancy in people's lives. And so I think having those spaces is really the thing that I'm gonna miss the most. Whether it be making a connection with someone 20 years my junior sometimes, which is also kind of crazy. I'm like, you're born post COVID, like you don't know a world without COVID. Like, I don't understand how you're speaking, like communicable, but also people 20, 40, 50 years my senior, and be able to talk about the same thing. I think that's a joy and one of the greatest privileges of my professional career so far. So something that I definitely gonna miss, that I'm never gonna take for granted.
Well, another conversation I had as part of this series is with a woman who's running a very cool organization called Stone Soup Cafe back east, where they have a pay what you can model, and all of the food is from scratch, gluten free. Like, they still serve like a 3-course meal once a week and soup, and they're trying to get their own building so that they can create a space that is that third space that people can just congregate and they know that they can get a meal every day. And I feel like marrying these two dreams together, the physical space with the garden around it and the pay what you can model where you can have a meal every day and people come from all walks of lives to share a meal together, I just think is such a powerful dream. And I'm looking forward to seeing you make it happen. So, as we explore in my brand, Amatand, which is French for to take care of your soul, objects can hold a lot of meaning for us. They can tie us to the past, enable us to be more present, and sometimes even take us into the future. Can you share an object from your life, whether you still physically have it or not, and
Yeah.
tell us why?
The first thing that came to mind was my mom and I were walking around, and we walking around a home goods store. We saw this beautiful pot. It was this like dark navy blue cast iron pot. It had this beautiful rooster. Both of us were like looked at each other and we were like, we need this pot. And we went and we got it. And especially over COVID, like we would just make so much with it. And I think it took on this like bigger meaning where I look back on it and I'm like, this is a pot that got me through a lot. Not to get too Dr. Seuss with it, but I'm like, this pot helped a lot. It really like it helped me get through some hard times. It helped me connect with family, and it's something that whenever I'm gonna, settle down, have a family, I'm excited that because we invested in really good quality because it was quite expensive. I was like, this is something that's gonna last generations, and I think it further kind of tie back into everything that we've been saying. I'm like, this pot holds a lot.
Amazing. I love it. Can you share a favorite tradition? It could be something you did when you were a child or something you do today, anything at all.
Favorite tradition? Yeah, every year my mom and I will make brisket together, which it just is like the most soul heartwarming food. That is something that I will forever be grateful for. Something that I love doing with her. And something else is so my dad and I will make these cookies together. They're called spéculoos. They're like 9, 10 spice cookies. They're honestly like incredibly overspiced. They're incredibly indulgent in spice. It doesn't need like 9 of them, but it has all of them. And essentially they like come in like little triangles and you put a little almond on top. And again, it's these little associations with food that like around Christmas time for Dutch Christmas we'll make them. And I think that is a tradition that also is very soul warming. And so every time I smell and I taste these cookies, I think of him and I think of Christmas.
Is it like ginger and allspice and
Oh,
those kinds of spices?
girl,
Yeah.
everything. And you got mace. You got all the ones that you don't really actually eat that much. You got mace, white pepper. It's like you pull out just for this
Wow.
cardamom,
Mm.
allspice, whole spice,
Nutmeg.
nutmeg, cinnamon,
Yeah.
ginger. I think Dutch colonial spice trade, they were just like, what if we put them all in one cookie?
Is it like
Um,
a hard cookie?
it is a very hard cookie.
Okay, interesting. I've never heard of this. I'm going to look it up.
Yeah.
But so my mom also made the best brisket. We can have an
Yes.
argument about that. But I will say everybody has their own like method, what they put in it, how they cook it, how they double cook it, how they cut it, all of these things. And like her potatoes, because they would get cooked so many times, they were just this
Luscious.
perfection, just perfection, like a little bit crispy on the outside, but like this softness to them. And even how my mom and stepdad they would cook the brisket, take it out, then slice it, then cook it again. So there are all of these like little methods and tricks, and we all love our favorites. Like, the way she made matzo balls was better than anybody else's matzo balls. But that's the beauty of it because it
Yeah.
does take you back to those moments. And another conversation I had as part of this series is with Rachel Hertz, who's a doctor, a PhD, and studies the scent of smell. And there is data that when you have something that you smell, like maybe it's for Passover, it's once a year, when you're sick, it gets ingrained in your brain, frankly, and it does bring back these memories. And that is such a powerful thing in life. And I think just a beautiful thing. Like life is not all good, it's not all easy, but these memories bring back good memories, even if there's sadness associated with loss or other things. So,
Yeah.
okay, are you in a phase in your life where you enjoy entertaining in your home? Why or why not?
That is a fantastic question. So I actually moved 4 days ago, so I'm kind of bouncing
Oh my gosh.
between I'm kind of bouncing between homes. Prior, when I was there, absolutely. It was my favorite thing to do. We lived in a beautiful house. And so I I love entertaining. I think it's the biggest gift, the biggest like thing that you can share with somebody is your own space and your own food. And it's something that especially this summer I'm gonna go back to New York and I'm just so excited to be able to cook in my own kitchen at home and hopefully continue that, take that onward.
Amazing. Love it. Do you have any tips for people?
Yes, budget time. Budget like 20 more minutes than you think you're going to need. Be generous with yourself. Always get a little bit extra of the produce because you just never know. And worst things worse, you have a little bit of produce that you'll just cook for another time.
Or make a stock.
Or, exactly, you never know. Or make a stock. Those would be my 2 tips. I also, this might be very specific, but I have recently become really into like candlelight. Even if it doesn't need a candle, add a candle. Make it a little fancier. Shush it up a little bit. Put a little, like, I don't know, put it in a candlestick holder. And there's just something about like a nice little glass of wine and a candle that like just, I don't know, puts the body right at ease.
Yeah, and there's actually a lot of science behind that too. I did a whole series on neuroaesthetics, and especially as the sun goes down with your circadian rhythm, you want to turn off the lights above you and have candlelight and less bright lights and lights that are not above you. So you're just naturally doing what you should be doing. So keep doing it.
Fantastic. I love that you keep pulling from other guests. I have such a holistic body of knowledge, it sounds like, about who we are as people. This is, I mean, it's fantastic.
Well, I am learning, and that is why I love doing this. Okay, 2 more questions. One, do you have 1 or 2 top resources? They could be books, podcasts, websites, anything at all. And it doesn't have to be about your area of expertise. It could just be your favorites. Like sometimes people just give us their favorite books because we have a lot of listeners who love to read.
I have 2 authors. One, Claudia Rodan. She's a Syrian, Egyptian, Jewish writer, written a plethora of books. A lot of them about Middle Eastern food, a lot of them about Jewish food. The Book of Jewish Food is like my Bible, ironically enough, of cuisine. I love it. I love that book down. Another one is Yotam Ottolenghi. I had the privilege of being able to hear him speak a couple years ago. And my God, I mean, the way that that man approaches food, views the power, the importance, the tradition, the legacy, and also the importance of just the power of food. I think he's brilliant, and I think he's someone who I want to model my future career off of later on. So definitely any cookbook by him, Plenty, Jerusalem, Simple, any of those, please get. And then on a more personal level, I read a book called Martyr recently, which blew my mind. It's written by an Iranian American writer, and it's about a man who lost his parents when he was rather young, and him navigating what it's like to be queer, what it's like to be Iranian in America, his relationship to life, his relationship to sobriety, his relationship to the importance, the value of what it means to live a meaningful life. And that book changed my life. I loved it. I became enamored immediately. I cannot recommend that book enough.
Amazing. We will put these in the show notes.
Perfect.
And I'm excited. I have some new cookbooks and another book to read. So fantastic. Anton, thank you so much for joining me. It's been such a pleasure talking with you. I'm really excited for you for your next chapter and really sad to hear that the CalFresh and the SNAP Ed program writ large is ending. Let's hope that there's a change in policy before you get to make it. And that in the meantime, all of the work that you have sowed the seeds of over the last however many years will continue to grow because you've taught so many people how to grow food themselves. And hopefully they'll carry on that legacy as the policy sorts itself out.
This is so special and so meaningful. Thank you so much for having me on. This was incredible.
On the Table with Ashley is presented by Amatond, an elevated, everyday, luxury home and tableware brand with products designed to cultivate connection. You can learn more about Amatond at amatendre.com or on Instagram at Amatond. By subscribing to our newsletter on the Amatond website, you'll receive updates on new episodes as well as promotions relating to Amatond and Amatond's products. Send us an email at reachoutanytime@amatond.com if you have ideas for guests or series ideas you'd like to pass along. Thanks for listening.